For its current good fortune, the mountain pine beetle can thank us. To start with, we've spent the past century eliminating forest fires, thereby turning the woods into beetle buffets. When the crisis began, British Columbia's forests were packed with 3 times as many mature pines as there would have been had they been allowed to burn naturally. Like mountain pine beetles, fire is native to western forests, and it's as important as rain to their health. It nourishes soil, spreads seeds, creates openings for sunlight, ensures habitat for all sorts of creatures. According to Alan Carroll, an insect ecologist at the University of British Columbia who has been studying the beetles since he was an undergraduate in the late 1980s, only 17% of British Columbia's lodgepole pine forests were ripe for a beetle attack a century ago. Hilary Rosner teaches journalism at Syracuse University. This is her first feature for the magazine. Photographer Peter Essex first appeared in 1986. By the mid-1990s, that number had risen to more than 50%. Yet even that epic surge in vulnerable mature trees wouldn't by itself have killed whole mountainsides across 10 states and 2 Canadian provinces. That vulnerability intensified the epidemic, but a change in climate was required to kick it off. The beetle has us to thank for warming the whole planet with our carbon dioxide emissions. Rising temperatures and drought have stressed the trees, leaving them unable to fight an invasion. Warmer weather also has boosted the beetles' population and greatly expanded their range. They are flourishing farther north and at higher elevations, invading pine trees such as jack pine and whitebark that had rarely seen them until a few years ago. Because these trees aren't as good at defending themselves, a smaller band of beetles can overwhelm them. 3/4 of the mature whitebark pines in Yellowstone National Park are now dead, a blow to grizzly bears which eat the seeds in autumn, and to Clark's nutcrackers which cache the seeds for winter. In 2008, Carroll and other researchers produced a report for the Canadian government concluding that the risk of the mountain pine beetle infesting jack pines in the boreal forest, which stretches right across Canada, covering 1/4 of the country, was small but significant. But the beetle is already in jack pines. It has now colonized Alberta all the way east to Saskatchewan and north to the Yukon and Northwest Territories. Unlike lodgepoles, jack pines live as far east as Nova Scotia and down into the upper Midwest and New England. Will the beetle move across the continent? Asked Carroll. Colleagues call him Dr. Doom. If he's meeting with your local officials, it's a good sign your forests are toast. He answers his own question. Yes. atop Carol's desk at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. A motorcycle helmet and jacket sit at the ready for his semi-weekly commute home to Vancouver Island, a trip that takes several hours and winds past thriving forests of Douglas firs. Carol often takes back roads to spend more time amid robust trees. Under his desk is a white bucket containing a lodgepole pine log. Inside the log, a female mountain pine beetle. Carol calls her his office mate. Had laid her eggs. Carol's office mate is a Dendrotonus ponderosa, one of about 6,000 species of bark beetles, including 500 that live in the US and Canada. Most bark beetles lay eggs under the bark of trees that are already dead or dying. Only a few species burrow into healthy trees, and of those, most go in as a lone pair, posing no threat. Even the few species that do kill trees tend to target highly stressed ones. The mountain pine beetle is the bed bug of the bunch. Given the right conditions, it can ravage one healthy tree after another. Pine beetle exercise, death by 1,000 bites. For centuries, the relationship was mutually beneficial. Pine beetles called older, weaker trees, producing new beetles but also a healthier forest. Climate change, with its warmer, drier conditions, has upset that balance, leaving even healthy trees vulnerable to attack. First week, selection and invasion. The cycle begins in summer, when a lone female beetle bores into a tree's bark and releases a pheromone that attracts hundreds of other beetles. The tree tries to suffocate the insects by secreting resin into the beetles' boreholes. Second week, burrowing and egg laying. Beetles dig galleries under the bark, depositing eggs and blue fungi to feed the next generation. The galleries block nutrient flow in the tree's phloem layer. 60 to 80 eggs are laid in each gallery. Third week to 4 months, hatching and feeding. Larvae hatch and chew side galleries, feeding on the phloem and the fungi. The larvae develop cold resistance in time for winter. The tree remains green for months after beetles have fatally mulled it. 5 to 12 months, overwintering and dispersal. The beetle larvae lie dormant until spring, when they'll turn into pupae, then adults. The new brood feeds on fungal spores before dispersing to another tree. Pupa stage. Fungi carrying new adult. Needles turn yellow in the dry heat of summer. 13 to 24 months, red means dead. The beetles are long gone, and the drying tree turns red. Finally, it loses most of its needles and becomes gray.